Welcome to my new mini-series about writing macros in Roll20. This is going to consist of several parts that are going to be pretty short, and they're going to give you an in-depth look at various functions that are available for you when you're writing macros in Roll20. One thing is that everything that I'll be doing is available with a free account. I am self-taught as a programmer, and if I use the wrong name for something and you're someone who knows better and for some reason are still watching this, I apologize. This series is going to be one of the more nerdy things that I'll be making on this channel, which is saying something considering I'm running a channel about board games. But overall, I hope you find some good information in this series. Alright, the quick version of what macros are is that they're a script that's entered into the chat when you click a button or call a macro. A simple example would be rolling a d20. Normally you could come over here, find the d20, and then roll it that way. The easier way would be to type in /r1d20, and that'll roll the same way. Or you could do what's called an inline roll with double square brackets, and that'll give you a roll that way. Whenever you're creating macros, it's easiest to use inline rolls. The /r won't work in a lot of the scripts. So instead of entering these into the chat every time you want to roll a d20 or do something that you commonly do, you can create a macro. So head up here to your collection tab and we'll add a new macro. We'll call this d20, and we'll just enter the same text that we did before, and then we will save that. Okay, so now we have this macro called d20. If we check here, that'll put it in the bar here for us. So now, instead of typing it into the chat, all we have to do is click this button and it'll roll a d20 for us. Another option that you have is to type a hash mark, and then it'll pull up a list of all the macros you have, and you can just enter it that way. So now that's rolling the macro that we just created here. If we were to create one called, say, fight, and we type a hash mark, now we're going to have that one there as well. Obviously we didn't put anything in that macro, so if we roll it, it won't do anything. So there's two main ways to create macros. The first way is to create them here, and the second way is to create character macros in the abilities section on the character sheet. Generally, I keep the macros that are universally used for skill checks, rolling d20s, or other things that everyone does in the collection tab. And then the more specific, like spear attack or longbow, I'll put those in the abilities on the character sheets. Now, one other thing that you can do is you can enable show as token action. And if you do that, when you select a character token, it'll come up here in this top left corner. When you created a macro in the character sheet, you can also make that a token action. But that one will only come up for that specific token. So for example, if I make a second token, and I select it, you see that macro doesn't come up. It only comes up for this guy because it's on his character sheet. And that's the reason that I like to keep those kind of character-specific macros on the character sheets, so that it doesn't get too cluttered with macros all the way across the top of the screen. Because once you get like 30 or 40 monsters into your game, and they all have different types of attacks, it gets pretty cluttered. Alright, so now with all that out of the way, let's talk about how to create useful macros. For me, the most important thing is speeding up the gameplay, so if your macro is not going to do that, it's better not to make it. If your macro quick bar has so many macros that it takes you a minute just to find the one that you need, chances are you're actually just slowing things down. Obviously, the most common thing you're going to be typing into the chat is a d20 roll. If you've got your character sheet at hand, it might make sense to just add modifiers manually the way you would in a live game. Just roll the d20 and then tell the GM what your total is. But if you want to automate things and make it easier for everyone to see your rolls, you're going to want some more specific macros.